Hey guys, tonight we begin with something a little darker. The unsettling elegance of sleepless nights among 18th century aristocrats.
To deny me rest?
Forget the silk sheets and lullabies Hollywood sold you. This was a time when insomnia wasn't just a nuisance, it was a performance. A nightly ritual of pacing, powdered wigs and candlelight, and servants whose only job was to make sure you could properly toss and turn in style. Yes, before melatonin, before sleep apps, there was a nobleman standing at the foot of his bed, debating whether dreams were a sign of moral decay. Tonight's tale is a quiet descent into feather mattresses, chamber pots, and a truly bizarre obsession with segmented sleep. We'll wander through the boudoirs of France, tiptoe past snoring footmen, and try not to spill our night wine while lying perfectly still under 3 layers of embroidered absurdity. But before we curl up too deep, take a second to like the video and subscribe. Only if you genuinely enjoy this kind of sleepy nonsense. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us in this odd little corner of the internet. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Let the shadows stretch long across your ceiling. And let's ease into tonight's strange slumber. Congratulations, you've just woken up in an aristocrat's bedchamber in 1765. You open your eyes to the faintest light creeping past heavy velvet curtains. Not sunlight exactly, more like candlelight reflected from a hallway where your valet is already bumbling about. You're lying on a high mattress stuffed with goose feathers, draped in silk, and embroidered with your family's crest. It should be luxurious. It isn't. The canopy above your head is slightly mildewed from last month's roof leak, and your nightcap, tied in perfect symmetry at bedtime, is now halfway down your face, soaked in drool. Welcome to morning in the 18th century aristocracy. The first thing you notice isn't warmth or comfort, or even the smell of breakfast. No, it's the cold. Not sharp, outdoor cold, but that clammy, indoor chill that somehow nestles into the bones, despite all your privilege. There is no central heating, of course. Your enormous stone estate is built for grandeur, not insulation. You shift under your brocade coverlet and hear a faint crack. Perhaps a mouse bone left in the mattress stuffing again. Charming. You call softly for your servant, but he's already entering without knocking, carrying your chamber pot like it's a trophy of domestic loyalty. Before you can even sit up, he's helping you into your morning slippers, which are pre-warmed. Not out of kindness, but because he stuffed them into his own coat pocket on the way up. You groggily accept a shallow dish of tepid rose water for your hands and face. Soap is for peasants or emergencies. This is aristocratic hygiene, and it involves dabbing, not scrubbing. You don't brush your teeth, you rinse your mouth with clove-scented wine and spit it elegantly into a porcelain bowl. Then comes the ritual of dressing. It takes an hour. Not because you're picky, but because your clothing has more layers than a wedding cake. Your valet helps you into breeches, a frilled shirt, a waistcoat, a morning robe, and of course, powdered stockings and a small dagger, just in case breakfast conversation gets tense. Breakfast itself is a sorry affair. Cold meat from last night's dinner, preserved fruit, and maybe a small goblet of chocolate if you're lucky, though the chocolate is thick and bitter. More of a sludge than a drink. You sit alone at a massive dining table built for 30, lit by a flickering candle even though it's morning. Your fellow nobles aren't early risers. In fact, some are just now going to bed. Because, as you'll come to understand, 18th century aristocrats had sleep habits that made no sense, even to other 18th century aristocrats. There's no sunshine pouring in. The windows are shuttered to keep out imaginary drafts and real smells. You pull your robe tighter and shuffle back toward your writing desk, pretending to journal while really just drawing angry faces in the margins of your prayer book. You haven't slept well in weeks. But you won't say that aloud, because in this world, complaining about poor sleep isn't a weakness. It's a fashionable quirk, a sign of genius even, and you guessed it. The nap doesn't come until after dinner, if at all. By mid-morning, you're fully costumed and faintly annoyed. Your wig itches, your stockings are sagging, and your valet just informed you that the neighbor's peacock has escaped again and is strutting through your herb garden like it owns the place. But you're an 18th century aristocrat. You do not deal with peacocks, you deal with boredom. Your day begins not with labor, of course, but with a ritualized display of presence. You enter the salon. There are people there, technically, though most are half asleep in armchairs, sipping something herbal and pretending to read Voltaire. The fire is going, but it's mostly smoke. You cough discreetly into your lace handkerchief and settle into your favorite chair, which creaks ominously beneath the weight of your embroidery and ennui. Conversation begins with a yawn and ends in gossip. Someone dreamt of a dying fox, clearly a metaphor for political unrest. Someone else swears they've discovered a method for sleeping in 30-minute bursts to access divine visions. You nod slowly and pretend to understand, then excuse yourself to your study to think, and promptly fall asleep in the armchair for 7 minutes, snoring quietly. But napping during the day isn't always allowed, not officially. The court considers it vulgar. Instead, you are meant to practice pre-sleep reverie, which means lying on a chaise longue while staring meaningfully into a dusty corner of the ceiling, as if expecting your ancestors to whisper bedtime poetry. If caught dozing, you must claim you were meditating on the futility of existence. Lunch, or more accurately, le déjeuner, is late and strange. Cold fowl, a congealed sauce, possibly an artichoke with no explanation. You eat while listening to a flute sonata performed by a cousin with very little talent but an excellent inheritance. You clap politely. Everything here is performed, including digestion. Afternoon may include a walk in the garden if it's not raining. It is, of course. So you resort to pacing the long corridor that smells faintly of snuffed candles and damp velvet. You pass your ancestors' portraits, a long hallway of thin, judging faces who also didn't know how to sleep normally. Some days you host visitors. Today, a friend arrives to debate whether dreams are morally dangerous or spiritually cleansing. He's brought a pamphlet from Vienna explaining how segmented sleep allows one to commune with angels between the first and second sleep. You nod, fascinated, then realize this theory requires waking up at 2 a.m. to read scripture by candlelight while sipping warm milk infused with lettuce. You pretend to take notes. As evening approaches, you retreat to your chamber and dictate a letter by candlelight. You complain subtly about your digestion, hint at your neighbor's declining taste in curtains, and inquire about a new mattress made of horsehair you saw mentioned in a London journal. Your handwriting is atrocious, but that's part of the charm. Illegibility implies depth. Your servants bustle about lighting fires and fluffing pillows. Not for sleep, mind you, just for show. You have hours to go before you're allowed to lie down. Because sleep, real, honest, drooling sleep, is still considered suspicious. Something peasants do when they're done with their chores. You, on the other hand, are expected to suffer beautifully, and of course, it gets worse. The sun has long since disappeared behind the hedges, though you'd hardly notice. The drapes have been drawn since morning to keep the vapors out. Your chamber is dimly lit with candelabras, casting flickering shadows on your carved ceiling, which someone once paid a fortune to have painted with Roman cherubs now blackened by soot. The atmosphere? Dreary. Your mood? Sleepy, but not allowed to admit it. Dinner is served late, closer to midnight than evening. And it's a solemn affair. A lukewarm game pie, tragically overcooked vegetables, and something gray you hope is mushroom. Everything is seasoned lightly because seasoning is vulgar. You sip wine, red, slightly sour, and a bit gritty from the cork. Conversation turns to metaphysics, which no one understands but everyone nods to. Someone next to you dozes off into their soup. No one wakes him. It's considered rude to interrupt an aristocratic trance. After dinner, you're expected to participate in some sort of after-meal repose. This usually involves sitting very still while a poet recites something long and allegorical about the moon. You attempt to remain engaged but find your gaze drifting to the flickering flame of the fireplace, wondering if sleep will finally come easily tonight. It won't. By the time you're dismissed from the drawing room, your body aches. Your corset, yes, gentlemen wear them too, has left indents on your ribs. Your powdered wig is slightly askew and smells faintly of old flour. You're escorted back to your bedchamber, where a servant removes your outer garments with the delicacy of someone diffusing a trap. Your nightshirt is crisp and cold. The sheets? Worse, icy and stiff, like sleeping inside a starched handkerchief. You slip beneath the covers and stare at the canopy overhead. It takes several minutes to arrange the blankets properly. There are rules. The embroidered one must rest atop the quilt, but not touch the fur trim. Your feet must be angled just so, in case of surprise visits. You hear a mouse skitter across the floorboards and make peace with its presence. He lives here now, too. Just as your eyes begin to close, you remember segmented sleep. You're expected to wake up around 2 a.m. for your spiritual intermission, so your valet places a candle and a devotional tract on the bedside table, right next to a small dish of warm milk with nutmeg. You sigh, deeply. The room smells of old books, damp wood, and something faintly sour you can't quite place. Someone in the adjacent chamber coughs 3 times, then starts singing softly. It's unclear whether they're awake or dreaming, or just mad. You pull the blanket tighter and try to block it out. Outside, the wind howls like a starving dog. Inside, everything is still. Except your thoughts. You scratch your leg, then your shoulder. You're not sure if it's fleas or just existential dread. Either way, you can't fall asleep. You turn over and face the wall. It's colder there. The candle flickers once, then dies. And yes, this is how you went to bed. And yet, somehow, they endured. Through the sleepless nights filled with whispering curtains and creaking floorboards, through the endless rituals of rosewater, powdered wigs, and ceremonial insomnia, the aristocrats of the 18th century drifted, not into restful slumber, but into the strange performance of sleep as status. They believed rest was not something to fall into, but something to curate, to struggle against, to be worthy of. You might pity them, wrapped in silks and seated in palaces, but utterly at war with their own circadian rhythms. Or maybe, in some quiet way, you understand them. The nights when your mind refuses to quiet down. The restless shifting under too many blankets. The pressure to sleep well, as if that too were an accomplishment. But tonight, you have something they didn't. A soft pillow without horsehair, clean pajamas without lace, a mattress that doesn't creak, and perhaps, most importantly, peace. No midnight devotional readings, no neighbors reciting Latin at 3 a.m., no rodents unless you invited them. The gift of sleep has never been more accessible and more miraculous than it is now. So take a deep breath. Feel the quiet hum of your fan, the warmth of your blanket, the sheer joy of not being an 18th century aristocrat who believed a chamber pot made of porcelain somehow compensated for chronic exhaustion. If you enjoyed this little journey back in time, feel free to like the video and subscribe. but only if you genuinely enjoy these soft, strange corners of history. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What would have been your biggest struggle as a noble with no sleep? The wig, the midnight milk, the awkward poetry readings? Wherever you are, whatever time it is, may your sleep tonight be dreamless, deep, and delightfully modern. Good night.